about to open. City of Pompano Beach Zoning Board of Appeals this Tuesday, January 18th at approximately 6:05 p.m. Meredith, would you call the roll, please?
James Bunn.
Present.
Joe Circusi.
Present.
Penny Cutt.
Here.
Rich Dowley.
Present.
Linda Thomas. Charlotte Burry.
Here. Thank you. Before we get started, those of you that have never been to the Zoning Board of Appeals before, I would like to tell you that the two lovely people to my right and the three lovely people to my left and myself, we are all citizens of the City of Pompano Beach, and we serve the city without any compensation. On my far right is Scott Reale, who gives us all the good news from the Development Services Department, and on my far left is James Saunders, who is our attorney. And the young lady hiding behind the glass is the one that gets all your paperwork and makes sure we get it all so that we read it. Thank you, Meredith. To explain a little bit about the Zoning Board of Appeals, this is a quasi-judicial proceedings, which means it's just like a courtroom. And in a few moments, I will ask anybody who wishes to speak on any item on this agenda that they stand and raise their hand and be sworn in. Everything is recorded and it's kept for the record. The petitioner, when called upon, will come to that microphone, state their name and spell their last name and their address, and then Scott Reale will go ahead and explain, and then the petitioner can present his case or any witnesses that he or she wishes to do. And in certain items, not on all our items tonight, the audience will be able to state whether they're for or against the item that we're about to decide on. And that being said, item number 1, appellate remand to approve Kaja Properties order granting certiorari. Wherever you'd like.
Should I start?
Yeah, Madam Chair, although the representative for Kaja is here tonight, I've advised that this really is more of a matter of housekeeping for the board. And so staff is going to give sort of a chronology to kind of make sure the board is aware of how this case got to you today. And then I will follow up with a few comments related to the order from the Circuit Court in regards to the certiorari.
Thank you. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is agenda item number 1, and this first agenda item, which is PZ number 23-17000007, is probably familiar to most of you. The initial request was to allow for a car wash via special exception in the B3 zoning district at 3685 North Federal Highway. The ZBA first denied this application on September 21st, 2023. However, the board granted a rehearing request on October 19th of 2023 after the applicant listened to the board's concerns by revising their site plan to include additional stacking and queuing, providing an additional means of egress along Northeast 18th Terrace to help mitigate perceived congestion along Federal Highway, and a queuing analysis and traffic impact statement were also included when the application was reheard. The special exception application for a car wash was heard for a second time by the board on February 15th of this year, but again it was denied. So the landowner subsequently petitioned the Circuit Court for issuance of a writ of cert. That agreed order granting petition of writ of cert filed May 15th, 2024, and that's included in this agenda backup. And Mr. James Saunders, Assistant City Attorney, will be speaking on that matter now in further detail.
Thank you, Scott. James?
As I mentioned before, this matter has come back to the board based upon the remand from the Circuit Court, which granted this certiorari. And the principal reason for granting that was the absence of any opposition to the evidence that was provided by the applicant. Again, I think it's self-explanatory. And what happens tonight, the order is self-explanatory. And I think what happens tonight is that this board, consistent with that particular court order, is required to approve that particular application for purposes of our record. Some often would say, well, don't we do a rehearing? And the law, the case of the law, it basically says that when the appellate courts have ruled on these legal issues, it becomes the law of the case. And because it is the law of the case, you don't get sort of a second bite at the apple to sort of figure out how you can circumvent that with other details. It provides finality to litigation once the court has ruled on those legal issues. So tonight, I'm going to ask the chair, if you would, go through the process, accepting a motion and vote on the approval of this application without accepting any public comment on it, because again, you are mandated by the court, and the court is enforcing its mandate. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Yes.
In planning and zoning case 23-17000007, I move that we find there is competent and substantial evidence in the record that all requirements for granting the special exception have been met, and that we grant the special exception subject to the 4 conditions requested by staff.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion by this board? Hearing none, Meredith, call the roll.
Penny Cutt,
Yes.
Rich Dolly,
Yes.
James Bunn,
Yes.
Linda Thomas,
Yes.
Joe Sircosi,
Yes.
Charlotte Burry.
Yes. All done. Oh, I saw there's people running by. I neglected to say, if anybody's watching on television, that item number 3, special exception by the Jean-Pierre family community residents, has been removed from the agenda, and so that I will not be heard this evening. That being said, we will go on to item number 2, reconsideration of a previously denied item. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This agenda item also may seem probably familiar to most of you. It's P&Z 23-17000010. The initial request was to allow for a special exception for a family community residence in the RD1 zoning district at 1302 Northeast 4th Street. The ZBA first denied this application on January 18th, 2024. However, subsequent to the initial denial and in furtherance of the city's position, the city re-engaged the services of Mr. Daniel Lauber, who's in order to supplement his initial report and to clarify the zoning requirements and processes for evaluating community residences. Mr. Lauber, of course, is a renowned planner and attorney that specializes in community residences. On February 19th, 2024, a memo from Mr. Lauber was provided to the board, and the board granted a rehearing request set for March 21st, 2024. The special exception application for community residence was heard for the second time by the ZBA on May 16th, 2024, and it was again denied. And it has come to staff's attention that one or more of the board members may be interested in reopening and reconsidering this application. So it was renoticed in accordance with applications for going before the ZBA.
Thank you. This one, should the petitioner come before, or just a motion for reconsideration at this time?
This is procedural at this time by one of the individuals on the prevailing side who wanted to bring this matter
Right,
back.
so then anyone that voted against has to vote to motion to reconsider.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider planning and zoning case 23-1700000010.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Pennicutt,
Yes. Are we going to have discussion? Oh, this is for
This is for the
reconsideration,
reconsideration.
yes.
Pennicutt,
Yes.
James Bunn,
Yes.
Joe Sircosi,
Yes.
Rich Dolly,
Yes.
Linda Thomas,
Yes.
Charlotte Burry,
Yes. Okay, yes, James.
Yeah, so just for board discussion at this time, after our previous meeting where this was denied, after reviewing the information that we had been re-reviewing the information that we had been provided, and numerous subsequent discussions with Mr. Saunders and Mr. Reale, it has come to my attention that I had a few extra questions that I wanted addressed, and it appeared to me that I may not have voted appropriately based on the information provided and the legal opinions we were given to review. One of the things that I was most hung up on was Figure 7 from the original report from the legal expert that we were provided with. Figure 7 included licensed community residences, unconfirmed community residences, and confirmed community residences that were both unlicensed. And I don't know if it would help to share this on the screen so everyone can see it. So Figure 7, the 2017 report we were provided by in the legal opinion for guidance on clustering broke the city up into 7 different zones, 7 sub-areas as they were called, and sub-area 3 includes our project site. And when you consider not only the licensed community residences, but also the unlicensed, unconfirmed, and confirmed, there appears to be a prevalence of facilities within that area based on 2017. So I had requested staff update this map for us to discuss and review, and it appears that this map, I guess, is not necessarily updated. It was a document compiled by the legal expert. But I wanted city staff, and we've got 3 staff here to address some of the questions pertaining to, why is there a phone on there?
What's on there?
Sorry, this is the GIS map that is
Oh, okay.
more updated. I don't know, in full disclosure, I don't know that it's available to the public, but we use it as an interactive GIS map that shows what we believe to be the community residences out there, and we do this search also when new ones come in to make sure that there's not a distance separation.
Okay. And so what I was really looking for was, in addition to the licensed community references that we were notified of in our backup, but I also wanted to see an updated map of the unconfirmed and confirmed unlicensed community residences, but apparently that's not a document that the city maintains for us to review. The only document available to review is what Scott was just showing us on his phone, which is the licensed community residences. That being the only information available to us to consider, and re-reviewing the 2 legal opinions guiding us on making our decision with respect to the rules and regulations for this proposal, in my opinion, it appears that this should have been, my vote should have been a yes, based on reviewing the legal information provided to me in the rules and regulations, and with this 2017 updated figure not being available to us.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion of this board? May I have a motion? May I have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion in just a moment, as soon as I get this back up. Figure out what I'm making a motion for. In planning and zoning case 23-17000010, I move that we find there is competent and substantial evidence in the record that all requirements for granting the special exception have been met, and that we grant the special exception subject to the 5 conditions requested by staff.
I have a second.
A second.
Okay, any further discussion from the board? Call the roll, Michelle.
Pennicott,
Yes.
Linda Thomas,
Yes.
James Bunn,
Yes.
Joe Circusi,
Yes.
Rich Dolly,
Yes.
Charlotte Burry,
Yes. Granted. And now, without taking a break, we jump to item number 4, which is a variance for CCIV Holdings LLC. Now, before you come up, because I didn't do this before, anyone wishing to testify on this matter, please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in. Michelle?
do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. If the petitioner will come up here, state your name, spell your last name, and give the address, and then Scott will take over, and then it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Matthew Scott. I am a zoning attorney at the law firm of Greenspoon Martyr. Last name is Scott, S-C-O-T-T. Address is 200 East Broward Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. I'm here on behalf of the applicant.
Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the applicant landowner is requesting a variance from Section 155-4302B2F and 155-4303JJ3AI of the Pompano Beach zoning code in order to allow an emergency generator to be located in a required yard setback on a through lot rather than located outside of the required yard setback as per code. The property is located on the north side of East Sample Road and on the east side of Northeast 13th Terrace. On December 14th of 2023, the ZBA granted a special exception approval, which was P&Z 23-17000011 for a specialty medical facility in order to utilize the existing office building as an ambulatory surgical center. Additionally, the zoning code was recently changed, very recently, Ordinance 24-35, which was adopted May 28th of this year, to allow an ambulatory surgical facility that is smaller than 5,000 square feet gross floor area to be excluded from the minimum 500-foot separation requirement from RS, which is single-family, or RD, two-family zoning districts. The applicant is proposing to place a new emergency generator with dimensions of 8 feet 2 inches by 3 feet 4 inches between the north building facade and a 20-foot wide alley that separates the building parcel from the subject property's parking lot. Because the ambulatory surgical center parcel is considered a through lot, which is 2 parallel rights-of-way, most accessory structures, including mechanical equipment, are prohibited from being located in this location. On a through lot, the front yard setback shall be measured from the minimum front yard setback requirement, shall be applied from both the parallel street fronting lot lines, from both of them. So the alley is considered the front yard, even though in reality it doesn't function as such. The conceptual site plan submitted indicates that the generator will be set back almost 4 feet from the alley and will include a new concrete pad, bollards, shrubs to screen the generator from view. And because the building takes up the vast majority of the site's lot coverage, there is essentially nowhere to place a generator without obtaining relief. Considering Sample Road and Northeast 13th Terrace are located directly along the south and west sides of the building, respectively, and an adjacent building is attached to the east side of the building facade, staff finds the proposed location of the generator on the north side of the site, adjacent to the alley, to be the most appropriate option. There are 8 variance review standards, and should the board determine that the applicant has provided competent substantial evidence sufficient to satisfy those 8 standards, staff recommends the board include the following 2 conditions. 1, obtain all necessary governmental permits and approvals, including building and zoning compliance permits. And 2, substantial compliance with the conceptual site plan submitted with this variance application. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Scott. And now, Mr. Scott.
Thank you very much, Scott. Thanks for that report. The board may remember this project. There's some history on it that I want to take the board through. Personally, I can share with you that representing this client, we've had a really interesting and great experience with the city working through this to help get this new surgery facility opened in the city. But there's been some bumps along the way, and so I'm going to take you through the history to kind of remind you how we all got here. This last variance popping up on us was quite a surprise, and so I want to give you the background. Here's a map aerial showing where the property is located. It's on Sample Road. It has B3 zoning. It fronts on Sample Road. Here is a closer image. These are some of these older buildings. I believe they were annexed into the city from the county at some point. And so they are all, a lot of them along this area, they're non-conforming. You couldn't rebuild them today. They don't comply with the setbacks for the front. They frequently don't have the landscaping required. You see odd parking configurations a lot of time with these older buildings. And so this property is an older office building or retail store, I believe, with associated parking across the alley to the north. As Scott said during his staff report, this being a through lot, what that means is it has multiple frontages. So it doesn't have a rear. And so that creates real challenges for accommodating some of the things that a traditional lot would have. And so it's my goal tonight to be able to present this variance to you, to convince you that this is really a classic variance. This is a open up the law book, why variances exist. Because we need to provide something on this site in order for the surgery center to operate and comply with state law. And there literally is no way to do it and comply with your code. And in my experience, that is sort of the true quintessential example of a variance. And so here's an image of the building as it existed prior to my client purchasing it. I will tell you anecdotally, although it's not necessarily germane to the application tonight, my client is undergoing major upgrades to this building. So my client's not only bringing a new business to the city that will provide a very valuable service to the community, but also investing a lot of money in making this a beautiful building. New facade on all sides, new windows, new parking areas, new landscaping, things that you would want a new property owner in the city to do, particularly on Sample Road. And so to give you the background again, my client, CCDV is the applicant. That's an entity my client created. My client, though, is Dr. Dane Pullman. He operates doctor's offices and surgery facilities. He helps people avoid opioid use. He helps people address chronic pain from nerve issues, from spinal issues, by providing minimally invasive surgical procedures that help people enjoy living their lives. And so the way that he came to Pompano Beach was he had lots of patients at his facility in Coral Springs that said, we live in Pompano, why don't you have a facility here? And so that led him to start looking for properties, and he landed on this site. And so what he's looking to do is take this building and use, give or take, half of it as just a medical office, and the other half is what's called an ambulatory surgical facility. By way of background, as Scott said, we were here in December seeking special exception approval because under your code, ambulatory surgical facilities require a special exception. This board granted unanimously the special exception application, found that we met all criteria, and this would be a good thing for the city, considering the city has no similar surgery type facilities. However, we also had to request a variance. We had to request a variance because the code previously said specialty medical facilities, including ambulatory surgical facilities, could not be within 500 feet of a residentially zoned area. And so the code had this language that said drug treatment centers, pain management clinics, dialysis centers, and ambulatory surgical facilities, among others, couldn't be within 500 feet of residential zoning. And so we sought that variance, took a chance. Respectfully, I thought the board made the correct decision because what this board decided was that to deny the variance because we didn't have a hardship, meaning the site was just where it was. And this board, I believe, the chair said at the time, not saying we disagree with the use, not saying we don't want you, we're saying the code is the code. And a code amendment might be the better approach because it was sort of a larger policy issue. We took that advice with the special exception approval and the variance denial, and we met with the elected officials, right? We engaged in the democratic process, and we applied for a code amendment. And we talked to all the commissioners, various stakeholders in the city, and said, hey, why do you have this 500-foot separation? Why do you not want ambulatory surgical facilities in the city? Why do you want residents of Pompano to have to leave and go to other cities to get these basic procedures that are really, really common and in high demand? The feedback we got was overwhelmingly positive. They said, you know what? We're not sure why we have this restriction. Why don't you amend it? So I applied for a code amendment, and last month it was approved by the City Commission unanimously. The code amendment said ambulatory surgical facilities do not need to be 500 feet from residentially zoned areas. And then I worked with James Saunders, who was kind enough to sort of guide me on how to make the code amendment the strongest from a policy perspective for the city. We came up with a definition to ensure that this was only for ambulatory surgical facilities. So I appreciate Mr. Saunders helping me with that. We landed on something that was good policy for the city, that ended with the city saying, you're right, we should allow these. Why would we not want to allow a place like this in our city? And so that code amendment was approved. So we no longer need the variance for that. That's behind us. And my client and his architect went and met with the city, Scott and others on site, on building permit type stuff, how to build the site out. And so we thought we were to the end of the finish line. My client was breathing a sigh of relief because you can imagine he had many sleepless nights. He discovers that he's got this generator issue. So that's how we are here tonight. So that's why I shared with you at the beginning, this has been a journey for my client. The city has worked with us, been very responsive, and we've worked really, really hard to try to bring this business to the city. But here's the issue. Surgery centers are required to have emergency power. They're required to have a certain type of generator because surgical procedures take place on site and you need to have emergency power. And so the generator type that's required by state law is 8 feet long, 3.5 feet wide, and about 6 feet tall. And so that it's give or take over 4,000 to 5,000 pounds. And so there are limits to where you can put that on a site. And so here's our plan showing where we propose putting it. So on the left side of the screen is an aerial looking at the site, bottom being the south side, so Sample Road, the top being the north side where that parking lot is I showed you. What we're showing you there is that we propose putting the generator on what we would kind of think of as the rear. It's the alley side, but it's a frontage. So the code says it's not permitted there. On the right side of the screen, you see a zoomed in area of that rectangular box, which is a generator, and how we're proposing to install it. So it's 4 feet off the property line, and we're proposing to install it with cocoa plums as a hedge. It will be installed at 6 feet tall, so the same height as a generator, and then would grow to 8 feet tall to fully shield it from view. And then here's a sample image of a generator from another facility that the architect worked on a site in Tampa. And so it just shows you that it's a rather large generator required by the state for a facility like this. And so here is the variance request. Here is how we got here again. There literally is nowhere we can put this generator other than in the back of the site. The code says it can't be in a front yard. The code has certain requirements of where it has to be relative to the yards. And so because this is a through lot and it's a non-conforming site, meaning the building is non-conforming, there is literally nowhere else to put it than this location. And so that's why I said at the beginning here that this is sort of a classic example of a variance. So here are just a few points about our rationale. As I said, we're bordered by Sample Road to the south, Northeast 13th Terrace to the west, and then an alley access road to the north. And then we abut an office building to the east, so of course we can't put it on the east side. And so because this is adjacent to an alley/access road, it's really the only place to put it, but it's technically a frontage. And it is important to note that this proposed placement meets the other criteria associated with accessory mechanical equipment, meaning we meet all other code requirements. And so I thought, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but I want to hit sort of the high points of the criteria for a variance. The first one being the strongest. There are extraordinary and exceptional conditions here. This is an existing building that is a through lot. There is literally nowhere to put this generator that would comply with code. And these are not the result or the actions of the landowner. This is a state requirement that we have the generator. The property is existing with these non-conforming features, with a building that has no real side street or rear side. So there is just no place to put it that would comply with your code. And then the other criteria is that because of these conditions, the application of this code to the land or structure would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the land and result in an unnecessary and undue hardship. So in this case, if this variance is not granted, there is nowhere we can put the the generator, and nowhere that we can locate it so that we can comply with state law and open up this ambulatory surgical facility that, as we've said, already received the special exception approval. This is an unnecessary hardship. There are generators frequently put in side yards, rear yards of single-family homes that want emergency generators, and other businesses routinely have these generators in the back of their property. And so denying this variance would result in an unnecessary hardship. There simply is no other option for my client here to comply with the state law that requires these generators. We're not asking for any sort of special privilege. As I said, accessory structures are permitted throughout the city. This is simply the bare minimum that would allow my client to comply with state law and provide this generator. And then I spoke earlier about how we comply with code otherwise. So this criteria asks if the extent of the variance is the minimum necessary. We're not seeking to provide less screening of the generator. We're going to provide the full landscaping and make sure that it's maintained taller than the height of it, so it's not seen from the street. It complies with the setback, meaning it's set back off the street as much as we possibly can. And so we're not asking for anything more than the bare minimum, which is just simply to locate this generator in the back of the building. So I just want to close with a little commentary on our outreach to the community, just as a reminder to the board. Prior to our hearing before you and the City Commission, we did go and meet with all the neighbors, knocked on all the doors, talked to them about what we were going to do, about what we were proposing to do there. And we got an abundance of support from the surrounding neighborhood. They understood that the property is zoned B3, meaning a bar, a nightclub, a restaurant, a tattoo parlor. Lots of unsavory uses can be located there as of right. They said, why wouldn't we want a really nice brand new doctor's office and ambulatory surgical facility in our community? So we were able to collect an abundance of support from the surrounding neighbors. And so while that's not, of course, evidence for making your decision, we just want you to be aware that we did meet with the neighbors and did not get any negative feedback. And we think that's supportive of the overall request and the overall sort of vision and goal my client has of bringing this highly desired type of medical service to the community. Thank you for allowing me to make this presentation for the second time.
Thank you.
On this project. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Is your client with you? Does he want to speak, or?
I'm joined by the project architect who has more expertise on this generator than the generator requirements than I do. So
Okay.
he's here for questions about that.
So you have no one else to speak?
No,
Okay,
ma'am.
any questions from the board?
Yes. The generator, is that going to be like in emergency situations only, like if you lose power?
Yes, sir. It's just a backup in the event of losing.
Right, right.
And I will share that one of the things that I worked with Mr. Saunders on for the code amendment is that this ambulatory surgical facility will have no overnight stays. So the code is going to prohibit people staying overnight. This surgery facility can only operate during normal business hours. So this isn't for overnight situations. The emergency generator is just if they lose power till it's back up.
Thank you.
Any other board members have any questions? Can I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion. In planning and zoning, case number, bear with me. There's staff report, sorry. 24-1100005. I move that we have, I move we find there is competent and substantial evidence in the record that all the requirements for granting the variance have been met, and that we grant the variance subject to the two staff conditions requested by staff.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Meredith, please call the roll.
Rich Daly,
Yes.
Penny Cutt,
Yes.
James Bunn,
Yes.
Joe Sarkozy,
Yes.
Linda Thomas,
Yes.
Charlotte Burry.
Yes. Your variance is granted.
I just want to say thank you so much. My client's going to cry when I call him later. This has been, I mean, it's been tough, but it's been a really great experience. So I just want to thank you all so much for this, really. Oh, no.
And unless someone has anything to say, yes, Scott?
Madam Chair, I think we didn't approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Did we approve the minutes?
Oh, well, I didn't see that on the agenda, so there it is. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of May 16th, 2024?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, I also would like to just make one comment and ask for direction. In the item that came before you tonight involving the community residents, I know that there's been lots of discussions and concerns expressed by board members in prior hearings, particularly about the supervision that is provided or not provided in these residences. And in my discussions, I said that I'm pretty sure it's between staff and our office, being able to come back to this group to determine if there are advocacy or other alternatives, so that if those are concerns for this board, that those concerns, as previously, when all of the legislation that the chair is familiar with took place, this may be one of those items that can be tweaked, can be discussed, and can be advocated. Between Mr. Riali and myself, maybe in the future, we can bring back some information of some alternatives, because again, I know that that is a concern as expressed by members of this board.
Thank you. Does there anybody else want to say anything? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Well, do we need to request Mr. Saunders initiate that?
I was pretty much making the statement that Mr. Riali and myself will, based upon our availability, because I know I'm going to be out a little bit, he's going to be out a little bit, so it may not happen in the next 30 days or by the next meeting, but we will bring back something to the board for you to contemplate on what the next step should be.
Thank you.
Okay,
Motion
you
to
want to get
adjourn.
on to adjourning?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.